we're going to take a look at some questions for section 5.4, which is factoring general trinomials. So the first one that we're going to take a look at will refresh. I believe we did this one in class, but just so that you have the process nailed down. So if we have 2p squared minus 7p plus 3, what I want you guys to do in this case is I want to factor this. In other words, I want to see if I can break this into a product or a multiplication problem of two binomials. So we're going to avoid the box method since you guys told me that it wasn't your most favorite of approaches. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on this 2p squared. And the question that you should ask yourself is, how can I break apart a 2p squared? Well, in this case, you would break this apart into 2p and p. You're not always going to be able to break your first term evenly, okay? The reason being in this case is because 2 is a prime number. So the only two values that will multiply to give a 2 would either be a positive 2 and a positive 1, or negative 2 times negative 1. Okay, next we move on to our last term in our trinomial. And we want to ask ourselves, okay, I have a positive 3, and I need to figure out what two values will multiply to give me a positive 3. However, we also want the terms that we're going to fill in at these positions to interact so that when you FOIL it, you get this negative 7p out. Well, here's some notes for you. If you see that you have a positive 3 as your last term, but your middle term is negative, you can kind of use the context clues of the problem to figure out what kind of signs you should be working with. So, in this case, what we're going to take a look at is we see that we have a positive 3, but they're going to add to get a negative 7. So, your best bet is to say that you will have a negative times a negative, because a negative times a negative will give you a positive, but then if you add those two negative values, you'll get a negative out. So now I just need to figure out how to split, or what factors to use for 3. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and say, well, maybe I'll put a 3 here and a 1 here. And the reason being is if I were to FOIL this, and we'll just do a partial FOIL, because we know that 2p times p is going to give you 2p squared, and you know that negative 1 times negative 3 will give you positive 3. Why else would you have picked those values if they didn't multiply to give you your first term and your last term? So let's just take a look at 2p times negative 3, which is going to be your outer values. So that's going to give you negative 6p, and you should kind of notice, you're like, oh, I have a negative 6p, it's really, really close to 7p, so maybe I'm on the right track. And then we do negative 1 times p, which would be a negative p. We simply add those up together, and we want to know, we had discussed this like the middle child, right? Did I find the middle child? I did. So my final solution then is going to be that 2p minus 1 times p minus 3. Okay, we're done.